Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning and good evening. Since everyone is tuning in from wherever they seem to be, here in Illusion, time seems to be real. So, at any rate, here we are, and we are with you. Let us all come together in this moment now and tune in, setting aside all thoughts of the past, all future predictions, all thoughts that are of a distracting nature. Just let them go. Don't analyze them. Don't pay any attention to them. Just let them go and be here now. Now is the only time that is, and we are now, and you are now. So we've been talking a lot about awakening, because that is what this is all about, really, is awakening, you see. You see, you really do want to wake up from the dream. This world is a dream. In truth, there is no world but in your dream, you see. That means in your mind. It is in the mind. So you are the dreamer of the dream and not the figure you think you are. What that means is you're not the body. You're not a body roaming around in a dream. You are not the body at all. You are the dreamer of the dream. You are the mind that dreams. And so, being a mind, you have the ability to choose differently, you see. If perhaps you've chosen reactions, feelings that are of a negative nature, you have the ability to choose again. We want to remind you there are two parts to your mind. There is the right mind, where the Holy Spirit abides, and there is the wrong mind, where the ego seems to be. You can always tell which mind you are working with by how you feel. And that means by the thoughts that come and the feelings that accompany the thoughts. Does this make sense to everyone? Basically, you have a thought, and that thought feels like conflict. You can then be sure who's involved in that, and that would be your wrong mind. Does this make sense? Whereas if you have a thought and you feel at peace and it really is irrelevant, or it doesn't feel like anything, then you're just neutral. And you can choose to think with your right mind, which will only bring peace. Does this make sense? We want to remind you that these are always the two choices you have. Although they may appear, and they will appear, they won't may appear, they maybe will, they do appear in different forms. And so you don't quite recognize them when they come up in form, but form doesn't matter, you see. It's the thought, and it's how you perceive that does matter, you see. So you can tell by the results that come from the thoughts you're thinking, and that ends up being how you feel, you see. So, does this make sense to everyone? We want you to become more mindful rather than remaining mindless. The mindlessness is the ego's idea of whatever it thinks, you see. And it's always going to bring about feelings of conflict, feelings of specialness, feelings of fear, and etc. Lack of peace. Whereas your right mind, the Holy Spirit encourages feelings of peace, encourages even actions that lead to peace. But it isn't about the actions, it's about the contents of your mind, you see. That means, what mind are you thinking with, you see? So it is always about peace or conflict, love or hate, or love or fear, or lightness and darkness, you see. That's duality. That's what this dream is. It's a dream of duality, when in truth there is only oneness, you see. And you never really did separate from oneness, but you think that you did, you see. And that thought that you think that you did is actually the ego. Does this make sense? And as you went along in the believing what the ego said, that you had separated, that you could actually separate from oneness, you began to feel deep feelings of pain, deep feelings of guilt, you see. And that guilt has hung around, you see. And to alleviate this, what happens is the ego projects it out so that it doesn't end up being something in your mind, but it's something that's happening outside your mind. We want you to know there's nothing that's happening outside your mind in truth. You see, as we said, you have two parts to your mind. You have your right mind, which is where the Holy Spirit is in its peace, or the ego side, which is the wrong mind, which is about conflict, you see. So you can always tell. And we want you to become more mindful of that. So you don't feel like everything outside of you is happening to you, you see. Happening to you without your consent. What is actually happening is anything you do experience that seems to happen to you is because you made a decision to have that experience. And that was a decision to listen to the ego mind. Does this make sense? So this is a time of becoming more mindful, more aware of what thought system you are working with. Always. The more mindful you get, the more mindful you get. The less mindful you remain as, the less aware you are, you see. So this is a time of greater awareness. You want to become more aware and not remain unaware. This is the time. We are here. And so are you. We are now ready for the multitude of questions that have come in.
Oh, the first question. I understand that all healing occurs on the level of the mind. As a person who does energy healing work, I work on the physical body. I perceive that the healer is actually working on the emotional body, which shows up as densities within the physical body. The healer helps to release those densities and, quote unquote, lighten the load, so to speak. Is this correct? And if not, could you please clarify? How does energy healing work help a person if ultimately all healing occurs on the level of the mind?
Very good question. So we'll begin with the first portion of the question, which was about how you do your healing work and how you perceive the healing. Is this correct?
Waiting for response.
And you are correct that all healing is of the mind. So even though you seem to be doing the energy work, it's actually not as though it's coming from your form, you see. It's mind, you see. Does this make sense? And how you perceive that it manifests the things that you are helping to unload from and with someone. We're going to say with someone because everyone has to be on board for it to work anyway. Does this make sense to you? So with whoever you are working with, to alleviate them of whatever it is, these densities you were talking about, you see them in that way so that you can understand how to move them out. And this is symbolically. Does this make sense?
Waiting.
Because these things really do not have words, it's your interpretation of them that helps you to see them in that way so that you can be of help on that level.
Okay, I'm not grasping this.
Okay. So you, the questioner, are not grasping this, not the moderator, because it sounded like the moderator said that. So you are not grasping this. So the question was, are you doing this right? Is that correct?
Yes.
You can feel it in yourself, okay? That's what we really want you to know. It works for you. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so keep going with that, okay? Don't analyze it. See, that's what's gotten you thinking about this in this way is you're second guessing your own intuition, you see. Does this make sense?
Waiting for a response.
So we're not going to go too far into how energy works because we want to remind everyone that everything here is illusion, you see. Everything, including energy work, you see. So, but it's a loving gesture, so to speak. Does this make sense?
Yeah. So should I trust that this form of healing works?
Does it feel like it does?
Yes.
Then it does. Wonderful. Was there another part to this question?
No. So, no. Well, it said, how does energy healing work to help a person if ultimately all healing occurs on the level of the mind?
Wonderful. So everything does happen on the level of the mind. And for it to work, the individual receiving the energy work actually has to be open to it, you see. Does this make sense? So someone who doesn't believe in energy work and doesn't believe in any of this would probably just say it's not working. Does this make sense? But what you can do is hold in your mind that this is not about the body. You see, it's not about the body, it's about the mind. And so you see with your own mind, the individual receiving coming to this conclusion in their mind as well. Does this make sense?
Yes.
And the energy work assists because it gives some kind of anchor or some kind of, we'll say anchor, so that the individual receiving can feel something. Does this make sense? But ultimately, it's all mind. Yes. But don't take any of this seriously. You see, that's our main message a lot of the time. It's really just don't take it seriously. Enjoy it. Know that it's love and don't take it seriously. Wonderful.
Someone else asked, so we are not energy?
Well, you are. Now we're going to get into a whole new discussion.
Oh, before that,
Okay.
The previous questioner asked, so what is the point of doing it then?
Does it not feel like love? It's an expression of love.
Yes.
So there's always a point to love, and that's to bring more love. Does this make sense?
Absolutely. Yes.
Wonderful. Beautiful. Yes. So at any rate, as far as the energy question goes, you are mind. You see, you are spirit. Because energy is also form. Does this make sense? You are actually not form. You are spirit, which is formless. So, very good.
Yes, thank you. So many teach we are energy, and this clears it up.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next question. When dealing with health issues, I feel as though I have looked at many layers and released them to the Holy Spirit, but issues still persist. Do you get to a simple core belief that is at the root of all the health issues? I feel as though there's a core belief in guilt that is keeping health issues active in my experience.
Actually, we will tell you that that's true for everyone. although it is not always seen as guilt, you see, but it is guilt at the root. That's always the issue. So, but the way to let it go is to forgive, you see. Even though you are looking at these layers, you don't want to look at them as though they are real, you see. But you want to say, okay, this is simply an expression of guilt. And rather than judging it, I'm going to turn to the Holy Spirit and allow the Holy Spirit to show me how to perceive this, which is compassion, which is love, which is gentleness. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Wonderful. Does this answer your question?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question. Jesus, I am overweight and want very much to lose this excess body weight. I seem to go off and on diets and off and on exercise programs. Nothing seems to be long lasting. Can you tell me the best way to go about losing weight?
Well, we can tell you what's really going on here. We can't tell you the best way to lose weight because we don't talk about the body as though it is real, you see. You've got to realize that even the weight is not real. It's just part of your dream. And what you want to do is love yourself even more rather than judge yourself. Does this make sense? Because what you really want is peace of mind. That's what you really want.
Waiting for a response. But I still have to live in a body.
Yes, you do. But how do you live other than extending love throughout, no matter what? Right now, it seems, and what we're hearing is that you're living in a body of judgment. Does this make sense? Meaning you're judging yourself for going on and off diets, going on and off exercise plans. Nothing works, nothing's lasting. Why? Because I'm judging myself. And every time I go on and off diets, I judge myself even more. Is that kind? No. Does that make it more real to you? Yes, it does. It keeps it active in your awareness as though it's something solid and true. You are not a body, you see. You are not a body. But what your mind is constantly telling you is you are a body that has problems. And these problems are the root of everything. Does this make sense? When really it's your perception that's the root of all of these things, which comes from the wrong mind, the mind of guilt, you see. And so you may tend to go on and off diet plans. Why? Because that's the ego's purpose for it, you see. It's not about being at peace. That's would be the Holy Spirit's purpose for this, leading you along in love toward greater peace. Whereas the ego says, let's do this diet, go on and off and on and off. Then you can condemn yourself for going on and off and see that nothing works. And I'll prove to you that you're a body with problems. Does this make sense? And that's why we said you've got to be more loving. What this is a call for love. Does this make sense?
Will that help me to lose weight?
It may or may not. You have to learn to be at peace no matter what, not looking to externals to be the reason for your peace, but being at peace no matter what. And so we don't want you to get hung up on this is going to be the trick. You see, this is going to be the lose weight quick trick. It's not like that. Then it will stay, okay? Because then you're using it for the wrong purpose again. Does this make sense? When what you really want is to reach that solid state of peace that is uninfluenced and unaffected by whatever seems to be going on around you, in your mind, around the world, in your body, anything like that. You want to be at peace. And that peace will lead the way and help you make the right choices that will bring you greater peace. Does this make sense?
So yes, but can you offer suggestions on being at peace?
Yes, we can. In fact, we like to do that all the time. So when you find yourself in a moment of conflict, say, I'm listening to the wrong mind. I want to be at peace, so I'm going to turn my attention to the inner teacher of peace, which is in my right mind, and listen to what it has to say, rather than continue to listen to the murmurings of the wrong mind, which wants to disrupt peace. You see, remember, the ego loves conflict always. So if you find yourself in a state of mind of conflict, you know you're listening to the wrong teacher, you see. Whereas if you choose the teacher of peace and you begin to question your reactions, you see, as they come up, you say, okay, this feels like conflict. It must be coming from my wrong mind. Well, rather than continuing on with your wrong mind, say, okay, I must have decided wrongly, but I can choose to decide differently. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to choose peace instead of this, you see. Does this make sense? And that goes for any situation. No matter what you're observing, no matter what you're experiencing or seeing other people experience, anything like that, notice the energies or the thoughts really that come up and the feelings that go along with them, and choose what is peace, you see. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Wonderful. So remember, this is for everyone, your true goal is inner peace. And from inner peace comes all that you want, you see. And we're not talking about form things, although that can manifest in form, but that's not your ultimate goal. Your ultimate goal is a state of peace, unaffected by anything of the external. So actually, you want to wake up from this dream, you see. And that's the point of it, to wake up from the dream. Does this make sense to everyone? Wonderful.
Okay, next question. I've heard that we are only here to find ourself. When we recognize spirit as the force behind the form, we create holy relationships. Outside of quote unquote giving to get relationships, how do holy relationships bring us closer to awakening when you say that all minds are already joined in spirit? Is being in a holy relationship that has become intimate just a slick ego tactic to make the body real and spin our wheels? Thank you always for corrections to my insanity. We love you.
Well, wonderful question. And thank you for saying that you are willing to receive the corrections to your mind. So first of all, the reason for you seeming to be in this dream is forgiveness, you see. Does this make sense? That means,
yes.
Wonderful. The correction of the false idea of separation, because separation never really did happen at all. So, and as far as relationships go, everything is relationship. You have unholy relationships and holy relationships. The unholy relationships or special relationships are always ego-driven. Does this make sense? We also want to point out that your question actually comes from a standpoint of the ego, okay? Because it's asking questions as though something outside yourself can disrupt your harmony. The last portion of your question being that, are these relationships really holy, or are they a slick trick by the ego to make the body real? We want to remind you that that's always up to you, you see, that you can decide if something's going to rock the boat or confuse you even further, you see, or not. But we are going to say, don't get hung up on finding a holy relationship. That would still be the ego. Does this make sense? So you're not going to find a holy relationship. You see, a holy relationship is when two minds that are whole, which means healed, come together in a joining that doesn't seek to get anything, you see, but simply to strengthen what is actually true in both, you see.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes. So if you have a relationship and you're trying to make it holy, you know that it's not holy. Okay. That means something else is involved, because a holy relationship just simply is, you see. You don't think about it and you don't wonder if you're going to get to the next holy relationship. So, but yes, just lighten up about it. Lighten up about it. And your goal, just like we were saying to the last questioner, is not the form manifestation, but it's actually peace of mind, you see. So your goal is not to find a holy relationship or to even have a holy relationship. And sometimes the holy relationship is you and you see. And in fact, how you get to that is you have to have that you and you holy relationship, whole mind, you see, healed mind. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Wonderful. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. We have two. Oh, okay. So here's the next question. Okay. Through my husband's intimate friendship with another woman, I was plunged into a roller coaster of negative emotions. Through practicing A Course in Miracles and true forgiveness, I am feeling better. I had hoped to become strong enough to move away from this painful situation, but at the same time, I felt guided to not leave my husband. He wonders if we can go on living together, even if his friendship continues. I try to choose peace and to understand him, but unconditional love still seems far off. I feel stuck, but I long for a solution. How do I best love myself in this?
Well, that's a good question about how do I best love myself in this? Because what you're dealing with is a personality. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Wonderful. So personalities don't love, but they want love. And think about it like this. Do you feel at true peace with being with somebody with this kind of activity going on? The questioner may not be here, but we'll kind of ask the moderator if that makes sense.
Yes.
So do you feel as though you can be at peace even though this activity is going on and you know that it's painful? You know that it doesn't feel good. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Then what is the next logical step, you see? You have to look within and say, what is it that is keeping me here? What is the mindset that keeps me thinking to stay with an individual who is blatantly cheating on me? You see? And yes, of course, they're all stories and so on. But what is most loving, not just to you, but to him, you see? Because it's not necessarily going to be loving to him to continue to live with him. You're just enabling him. Does this make sense?
Mm.
Enabling is not loving. Enabling is from the ego, because it is a way that the ego can then project on someone else your inner feelings of guilt and hate and darkness, you see, rather than looking within and saying, help me to see this differently. What are the steps that I can take toward greater freedom, you see, to release myself from this? You don't have to stay in a situation if it is something that is so disturbing, you see. That's not the point of your awakening. We've talked about this with so many before, that the point of awakening is not to go through hell on purpose, you see. But we will say the hell that you go through or seem to go through is purposeful from the ego perspective, you see. That's the ego's purpose for the, in quotes, awakening, you see. You see.
Yes.
So wonderful.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Next question. How can I stop craving outside approval and just fully love and accept myself and feel one with God?
Wonderful question. And it's very simple. And you're going to, we don't know what you're going to do, but the answer is you have to choose it. You have to make up your mind to experience that. Does this make sense?
Yeah, waiting for a response.
So the question,
Yes.
okay, good. So how do you love yourself more and not crave externals to fulfill you? Well, you stop listening to the mind that seeks for externals to fulfill you or to fulfill itself, you see. The ego is a mind of lack. It's always seeking to get. Does this make sense? And so in that mindset, you're not going to feel that love, you see. Does this make sense?
Yes.
So the way to choose love is to stop listening to the mind that says it's out there. Go find it. Does this make sense? Wonderful.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, so this questioner may not be here, but I'm going to ask the question. As we begin to feel our true power, we see fear reflected back at ourselves. How do we deal with others' fears while remaining in love and truth? Are we to accept with unconditional love what others might be experiencing? Sometimes when we feel others deeply, a false sense of compassion arises. I find it hard to be determined without feeling being empowered over others and then identifying with the self again. Thank you.
Okay, so the first part was,
As we begin to feel our true power, we see fear reflected back at ourselves. How do we deal with others' fears?
okay. When you are in your true power, all you see is love or a call for love, you see. Does this make sense? And so then a call for love is asking for love, you see,
Yes.
not punishment, you see. So when you are in your true power, that's all you see, and all that comes from you and through you is love. Because love only makes more love, you see. It is the eternal nature of you, you see. So you can tell that you're not actually in your true power when you are looking at things outside of you and saying, look, that's a reflection of the fear in you, you see. What do you do with that? That's the ego. Does this make sense? So when that happens, you say, okay, there it is again, the ego coming up again to point out things that are not really there. What the Holy Spirit sees is a call for love, you see. It's very simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. You can always tell by how you feel. You really can. If you feel disturbed in some way, know that you're projecting. You're projecting. Does this make sense? And then you can take it back to your mind and say, okay, obviously I'm in my ego mind because I'm projecting out, because that's why I'm disturbed. But I can choose again. And so I will choose again. I'm going to choose to hand that over and say, enough of this. This is a call for love. And I'm going to let myself be guided by love in this and in everything. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Wonderful. So it's very important to know that when you feel like, and that's another part of your question was, it's hard not to feel like you are, what was the phrase about?
Find it hard to be determined without feeling being empowered over.
Empowered over. You know you are in your ego mind if you're feeling like you are empowered over. Okay, that means you are above someone. Does this make sense? If you feel that you're above someone, you know that you're thinking with your wrong mind, you see. Because your right mind sees only love, and that love is shared, and that is oneness, you see. So.
Great.
Wonderful.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, next question. Is it possible to hold someone accountable for their actions here and completely forgive them?
Yes. Yes, you can, but you do it from a mind of peace, you see, not from a mind of anger or a mind of punishment. Does this make sense? Because egos are not friendly, okay? And so if an ego acts up and does something that's not loving, then you want to take the steps toward demonstrating love, you see. Does this make sense?
Waiting for response.
And let's see, about holding someone accountable, you don't want to hold them hostage in that. So that's what we really want to make sure that you're clear about. That yes, you can say, okay, in order to make sure that you don't continue to act in this behavior in this way, here are the things that I would like for you to let go of. Does this make sense? But you do that from a mind of peace, not a mind of punishment, not a mind of judgment. Does this make sense?
Yes.
So, but you don't want to hold accountable as in hold hostage the thought of them, you see. Remember, what you thought happened didn't really happen. Do you remember that, right? Okay, so you come at it from that perspective, which is from a mind of peace, awareness, and you extend the truth, which is not you did this to me, or this is, or you're a terrible person, but here's what can work better, you see. Does this make sense?
Yes.
And you want to tune in and let the Holy Spirit speak through you and guide you in everything. So it isn't coming from the ego mind. Does this make sense?
Wait, yes, yes.
Wonderful.
Okay, the next question. Dearly beloved Ascended Master, can you please describe the most effective method of aligning our thought, word, and action with that of our great source?
Absolutely. Choose it. But really what we are saying, it is true, yes, choose it. But that's a really good question, to tune into yourself and say, state which mind you want to work with. Like we said, you have two parts to your mind, and it's always between the two, you see. So you always want to go toward that which brings greater peace, not in the way that you might think would be it, but allow the mind of peace to guide you. Does this make sense?
Yes.
So you get your ego out of the way and you ask, please show me the way, Holy Spirit. And if you feel feelings of conflict, you know that the ego is there, you see. But you don't go along with what the ego is directing you to do. Does this make sense?
Yes.
And so all that we teach is always practicing moment by moment. You pay attention to how you feel and the thoughts that come up in your daily living, you see. And that's where you can really do the work. It takes a greater awareness. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Okay, the next question. I have been studying ACIM for 8 years, and I have been applying the forgiveness practice. I had moments when things are so clear, and I can have a conversation with my internal teacher, but I've only had one experience of joining in pure oneness. Do I just keep practicing forgiveness? And as I let go of this ego self-concept, oneness will naturally become my experience? Or is there something else I could be doing with deep gratitude?
Wonderful. You answered your own question. You did, because it's true. It's just continue to do the practice of forgiveness. And yes, eventually that feeling of oneness will dawn upon your mind as you continue to practice. Does this make sense?
Waiting for response. Yes.
Wonderful. So you go about your life and do as we were saying about taking the practice into every moment and paying attention to how you feel, forgiving that which is not true, and listening only to the Holy Spirit, you see.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So as we tap into our heart and higher chakras, we seem to become more aware. This seems to make everything more serious, especially around other people. A sense of quote unquote protection arises around these higher energies instead of sharing with others. Maybe because sharing takes more energy from us. Is this something to master? Let's say the anchoring of these higher frequencies into our lower chakras. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, we're going to say chakras are a part of form. You see, it's part of the illusion. But what it can serve is, as what you were saying, actually an anchor to keep your awareness on what you want to feel. Say the heart chakra symbolizes love, stands for peace and light, and so on. So to tune into that center, you are choosing to listen to the mind of peace, you see. But rather than thinking that it's something that you have to personally cultivate, as in protect, you let that go, because that feeling of needing to draw up protection around these energies is from the ego, you see.
Yes.
So lighten up, lighten up, lighten up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next question. How much daily instruction, listening or reading, is good in order to stay focused on the path? And how much is just a distraction from the present moment?
Wonderful. You can do as much as you feel to do. Does this make sense?
Waiting for an answer. I think that's me, yes.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So yes, practice as much as you actually will say practice all the time. Practice all the time. But you don't have to read a whole bunch of different things. But you might find some things helpful and you can use those for a while and eventually you will outgrow them. Does this make sense? And it just happens naturally. That's not the point or your goal at all. It just happens. So, but just keep the practice up. Keep the practice going. So.
Waiting for. Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Wonderful.
I tend to crave the teachings, and that can take me off the moment.
You tend to crave the teachings, and it can take you off the moment. Meaning, you are in a place of peace and you feel like you have to listen to the teachings. Is that what you're saying?
I'm waiting for a response. Yes, maybe I'm not really in a place of peace and using the videos.
So you be loving to yourself, kind to yourself, and stop judging yourself and just go with the flow. Does this make sense? You don't have to say it has to be like this and I can't do this and I'm craving this watching of the video and I can't be at peace without the video and all of that. Sometimes it's comes into play and that would be the ego, but you don't look at it and condemn yourself for it, and you don't look at it as though it is wrong. Meaning listening to these videos or things like that, does that make sense? Because what you're doing in those times where you are looking at it through judgment, then you are making separation real to you. Does this make sense?
Yes, I tend to want to do things correctly. So
okay, see, that's
now I see the judgment.
Yes, so that would be your ego. The ego wants you to do things correctly, okay? Because Holy Spirit says, love, lighten up, go with the flow, you see. So the perfectionist aspect of you is the ego aspect. And it's more important, actually, if you just mess up a little bit and forgive yourself. That's much more powerful than being perfect, you see.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
By the book Perfection. That's not helpful, actually, because remember, you are in class and your teacher, your inner teacher, the Holy Spirit, needs to teach you with something. And if you don't ever give it the chance, because you're always trying to make it book perfect, then you miss the opportunity, you see. Forgive yourself when you go off track, you see.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
It shows itself again.
Yes, and it will continually until the end, and then it won't. You won't even see it anymore. So
Thanks a lot.
you're welcome.
The next question. You teach that we are not a body and we are only dreaming. Why do so many near-death experiencers describe themselves as being in a type of a body, but younger, free of pain and disease? Are they still in a dream state of separation, or are they fully awake? Are there levels of consciousness a person can enter after death, perhaps determined by your vibration when you pass? I love you very much and thank you.
We love you too. So, yes, the mind is still in the dream. We'll just say that. Okay. What happens is because you believe so fully in the dream, when you cross over, sometimes you need to see a form. Does this make sense? Because you can't go from believing fully that you're a body to total formlessness and be feeling at ease about that. Does this make sense? And so little by little, you are guided through in this way of showing you as a form, and others seem to be a form. That's out of love for you, you see. And we're not just saying you in particular, but in love for you in general.
I'm waiting for a response.
And so if you were fully and completely awake, you would bypass that whole gently going, well, it's all going to be gentle anyway, but you would bypass the scenarios of forms and you would go right to the source, you see. But you're so afraid. And again, the you we're speaking of is you in general. Humanity is so afraid of going right to the source that it needs these little steps, you see.
So we can bypass if we are awake here.
Yes, you can. But what is awakened means peace, you see. Does this make sense?
Waiting for a response. Oh, yes. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay. The next question. How does healing occur in a pre-recorded dream?
Well, everything is actually pre-recorded, so that will help a lot. There's nothing here that is not pre-recorded, you see. Everything's pre-recorded. It's all a dream. You see, and what you are doing is you are living what is already past, you see. So you are past. And the you we're speaking of is the form. Form is past, you see. Form is long gone, meaning it's already over. So how does healing occur in a pre-recorded dream? How is it happening now? You take the steps towards healing rather than away from healing. It's the same situation because this is all a pre-recorded dream. Does this make sense?
Is everything predetermined?
Everything, we'll say it in this way, that everything is already a decision you have made. Does this make sense? And it depends on which mind you're working with, because if you're working with the mind of peace, the Holy Spirit, then your experiences would be peace and more peace, which doesn't mean the form is going to be peaceful, but it means how you perceive everything will be from a place of peace. Does this make sense? Wonderful.
Okay, last question. What can we do to maintain a free society without involving the ego?
Beautiful. Number one, society cannot be free of ego because society is made up by the ego. So what you can do is live from a place of peace and extend only peace, you see, rather than getting into the story of conflict in a way that reinforces the story. You go through it with peace. Does this make sense? You allow others to be themselves. You allow things to unfold. You allow. That's a big one, allowing. The ego is always resistant. So if you're resisting, then you are in hostile territory. Does this make sense?
Waiting for a response.
So you perceive society to be hostile. But when you are in a mind of peace, you see that the world you think that is before you is simply a dream. You see it. And you don't make it, any of it, real to you or any more real to you. Does this make sense? You say, this is a dream. I can let this go. I can love instead of condemn. I can forgive instead of blame. I can choose peace instead of conflict. Does this make sense? It is moment by moment and step by step, continuing practicing always.
So circling back to the previous question, the questioner said, I am unsure about if everything is, quote, done, then I don't understand. And what then are we healing?
What was that last part?
What then are we healing?
What then are you healing is a false idea of separation, because you still believe in the false idea of separation. If you didn't believe in it and you were done with it, you wouldn't be here. Does this make sense? And you wouldn't have these questions. Does this make sense? So you look lovingly upon yourself with forgiveness, with compassion, and say, I'm getting there. I'm getting there. So wonderful. Well, thank you everyone for this wonderful joining. As always, we love you. And as always, we are always with you. You are never without. We are always but a simple call away. All is well, and we look forward to joining with you always. Namaste.